Okay, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, for the subject forensic photography. Have patience to understand the preliminaries that I included in this simple presentation. So do not skip, finish the video so that this video will not be put into waste. Okay, so to my students, be good always, be disciplined, and have patience. We will surpass every challenges that will come in our endeavor to finish this semester. So please focus and try to listen and understand my presentation as a guide to all of you, considering this status that we have in this pandemic. So as you can see in the initial presentation in this video, you will see several photographs of humble beginnings, and these photographs have recorded, documented, and preserved these moments in the past that we can use for the present, for whatever purpose. Thank you. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the subject forensic photography. Again, welcome to the subject matter known as forensic photography. Before I proceed, I would like you to understand that in practice, in the early times and recently, this subject before is known as police photography. I am saying this so that because if you go to the library and the references for today, commonly you will see your reference is entitled police photography. But for now, in the current curriculum, it has been modified and specified. So I would say that your subject matter this time is more specific compared to police photography. Police photography is broad as far as law enforcement is concerned, as far as photography is concerned. Not unlike forensic photography. Forensic photography is specific because this deals primarily on the photography conducted in the crime scene, or conducted during crime scene investigation. Of course, as I said before in your subject, fundamentals of criminal investigation, crime scene investigation is still a part of the whole criminal investigation. So likewise, forensic photography is also under or part of police photography. Because of course, when it comes to police photography covers all aspects Police photography covers all kinds of purpose in using photography. No? Example, when you do mugshot after as a part of the booking procedure, when a person is arrested for a crime committed, then there is what we call mugshot. In mugshot, you will use a camera. You will use the principles of photography. You will take a photograph of the person arrested. That is mugshot. But of course, basically, no, that is not no, that is not mostly related to forensic photography. No, so that is still a police photography. Because, as I said a while ago, no, forensic photography, no, focuses on the principles, on the rules, on the strategies and practices as provided by rules and laws as far as documenting the crime scene, no, using photography. You know, photography is a tool. No? Photography is a tool as part of instrumentation, as part of the tools of criminal investigation. So my point is, you have to understand that police photography is broad. No, it covers all police-related use of photography. No, okay. So when you conduct intelligence operations, when you conduct surveillance, no, when you conduct undercover with the use of camera, with the use of the principles of photography, in order for you to record, in order for you to document, no, whatever related, no, subject that you want to preserve or document, and that is part of police photography. So all matters, no, done by the police or the law enforcers using camera, using photography to document related subjects, that is police photography in general. But when the police or the law enforcer, no, focuses the use of photography, the use of camera to document the crime scene as a whole and its physical evidence at the crime scene, no, then we shall say that what is present is called as forensic photography. Commonly, the very aim of forensic photography is to use photography in order to preserve evidence for purposes of court presentation, for purposes of evidence in court, for purposes of evidence in court. Okay, so as I said a while ago, no, you should distinguish forensic photography with police photography. Though they are similar, that they are both used and applied in law enforcement, especially in criminal investigation, no? But of course, forensic photography, no, as a process or a system of photography is more appropriate when we are dealing with the use of photography for purposes of evidence relative to a crime committed, especially at the crime scene. the recording of the crime scene using photograph. You know, generally speaking, no, photograph is considered the most practical means of preserving physical evidence. No? Why it is the most practical means of preserving evidence? No? It is practical in the sense that no, we have to consider that almost all crimes are physical evidence are biological. In other words, these are subjected for deterioration, decay, or damage as time goes by. We have also to consider that there are physical evidence that are huge. There are physical evidence that are voluminous. There are physical evidence that are sensitive for destruction. That in a split of seconds, this evidence will disappear. No? So, with the use of photography, you will be able to preserve the integrity. You will preserve that particular evidence with the use of photography. No? Example, a corpse or a dead body in homicide cases. You will not bring the cadaver, you will not bring the corpse or the body of the victim during court trial whenever the court requires the dead body for purposes of cross-examination. So the best way to show to the court as evidence the body of the victim is with the use of a photograph. A photograph. That is the one that they will bring to the court. No, it is not the body, a decaying body, that you will bring to the court, because that is the exception. No, under the rules of court, anything you can present in court, but there are limitations. If it is repulsive, as a decaying body, it is repulsive. When it is immoral, it's like if the vagina of the victim, you will not bring that to the court and show to the court. That is not practical. So it is the photograph that you will bring in court. That is why it is considered the most practical means of preserving evidence, among others. No? So, you have also to understand that the photograph is the brother of a sketch, or crime scene sketch. So you have to understand that in criminal investigation, especially during crime scene investigation, the investigators, the sketcher, have to make a sketch, a crime scene sketch of the crime scene. The content of the crime scene sketch is mostly on the measurements, mostly on the location, measurements of the crime scene, how the crime scene appears as the location and measurements. But the crime scene sketch could not give you a picture, or appearance of the evidence, within the crime scene. So it is the photograph that will handle it. It is the photograph who will supplement the sketch of the crime scene. So that is how photograph, or crime scene photograph, or forensic photograph. When we say forensic, we are dealing with evidence to be submitted in court. An evidence that is needed by the court. An evidence that is purposely for the court. So that is forensic. So forensic photography, sometimes we call it crime scene photography. So that is my point when I say that you have to distinguish police photography with forensic photography. That is also my point when I say Before, the subject is police photography, but now they made it more specific that we have to focus on forensic photography, the conduct of photograph or the conduct of photography at the crime scene. Because you have to understand, as we discussed in your criminal investigation, the first and the treasure island where physical evidence are mostly found is at the crime scene. It is the treasure island of criminal investigation because it is where 90%, no, or majority of physical evidence are found for purposes of identification, location, and as evidence to prove the guilt of a suspect or accused or criminal. No? So that is the function of forensic photography. No? And the bottom line when you hear forensic photography is all about camera, the use of camera. That is the primary equipment that is being used in order for you to materialize and start photography. Because without camera, then basically you will not produce and you will not be able to produce a photograph. So photograph is the product and photography is the process. So for you to produce a photograph as evidence as far as forensic photography is concerned, you have to apply photography. So in connection to a crime scene investigation, in connection to criminal investigation, no, what you need is forensic photography. No? So that is all about forensic photography for you to understand. No? So no, for us to proceed further, no, let us proceed to chapter 1 of the course. No, the general considerations regarding photography. No, if you see in page 1 of your notes, it says photography is only a tool, a vehicle for expressing or transmitting a passion in something else. So in connection to photography or forensic photography, photography is a tool used to transmit, no, images, no, actual images of the crime scene and the physical evidence, no, that are very essential for the investigator to use in his analysis for purposes of identification, uh, uh, and location and evidence in criminal investigation. No? So, you know, I already discussed you the concept of photography. You know, photography is general. You know, so try to see this. You have to distinguish photography, police photography, and forensic photography. So photography, that is the root of everything. No? If photography has not been developed, then basically there is no idea for investigators to use photography in order to preserve and document evidence at the crime scene. No? So we have to be thankful for the development of photography in general. So, you know, the concept of photography has been established not because of crime, not because they want to document evidence, but photography originally, initially has been established because of the curiousness of man to record things surrounding them. No, that is why if you read your notes, in 1839, after many experiments by people, it started from the use of camera obscura. Many attempt to record images, pictures, until such time that in 1839, which that year became the birth year of the first photograph, no, that became a public knowledge. In other words, that is the year when the use of photography has been uh, put into public knowledge, meaning it became popular. The use of photography became popular, no, in that particular year. But of course, you have to understand that before 1839, there were many attempts of many people that have the curiosity to preserve and have a copy of images surrounding them. Okay, until such time also. So try to see, no, people before wants to record images, no, record images, no, because they discovered that light, when combined, they can produce image, no. So that is the first idea, no. Photography has been conceptualized to record images, not to record evidence, no. Until such time as years goes by, photography has been more developed, improved, and if you see in your notes, in 1859, in the United States of America, that was the year when the first enlarged photographs of signature has been presented as evidence in court as for the crime of forgery. So my point is, no, the use of photograph follows, no, after the development of photography. The use of photography to solve crime, or the use of photography to document evidence, no, followed, no. It is not the one that has been firstly conceptualized. So the first concept is to record images, and it follows that people, no, in the early times were able to conceptualize that photography can be used in order to preserve or document evidence for purposes of identification, no. So do not forget that. So in 1864, if you read your notes, it was Odelbrecht introduced the idea of using photography to document evidence. So that is why I am saying to all of you that in forensic photography, we use photograph in order to record, in order to document, and to preserve evidence for future use, such as for crime laboratory examination, analysis of the investigator, and of course for purposes of evidence in court. Okay, so you know, because of many developments of photography in general, no, as I said a while ago, in 1882, no, there was a person named Alphonse Bertillon, Alphonse Bertillon, who conceptualized the use of photography for purposes of identification of criminals, no, and that was the beginning of the concept of mugshot, no. That is the concept of mugshot, the taking a photograph of the suspect or a person arrested for purposes of record keeping, for purposes of record keeping. So that is Alphonse Bertillon as far as his idea on the use of photography as far as identification of criminals are concerned. Okay, so you have to remember, no, as far as forensic photography is concerned, no, what are the purposes of forensic photography? No? What are the purposes of photography? The purposes of photography is, of course, to record and preserve the as-found condition of the crime scene. I already mentioned that. Show the relative position of evidence of the crime scene. Establish the relative dimension of evidence. Cross-complement other archiving techniques. You see this, forensic photography also is known as forensic archiving. Uh, Recording of, archiving is all about record keeping. No? So when you photograph something, you recorded it. You keep it for future reference. Then preserve as found scene for future reference. Yeah. Then identify, of course, the criminal. So today, if you notice, no, because of technology, we have CCTV, we have drone. No? So when a person have committed a crime and luckily, he was spotted by the CCTV camera, then his image is recorded in the camera of the CCTV. And for that, we can identify and establish the identity of the suspect. And that is a very helpful one. Try to imagine without photography in this world. Try to imagine if photography has not been conceptualized. No, you know, photography is not only in criminal investigation, but photography in general records memories, records events, that is being used as reference for today and for the future. That is the only one that gives us memory, the photograph. Because also today, our mind is subject for deterioration also. We could not at all times remember an image, remember a person. So that is why with the use of photograph, we could remember the appearance of something or someone. That is the one of the significance of photography in general. So much more in criminal investigation, in crime scene investigation, photography is an important part of the whole process of recording, documentation, and preserving of evidence. Because investigators also are humans. They can forget, they can imagine what they saw. So that is why with the use of photograph, it will record, it will document, and it will preserve evidence for future reference, especially as evidence. Okay, so that is all about the concept of photography. Then of course, in general, you have to understand that there are principles of photography. Principles per se. Principles per se are proven and established reality. These are proven realities. These are proven facts. When you say principles, when you have a theory and you prove it, it will become a principle. It is a reality. So principles of photography. It says there that a photograph is the mechanical and chemical result of photography. And that is true. Mechanical because you have to use camera. You should know how to operate the camera. And it is chemical, especially in the early times that they are using film or sensitized material to record, and after that you have to develop it. And for you to develop a photograph, you have to use chemicals. There is a process of chemical reactions or use of chemical for you to produce photograph. But for now, It is the use of, there is still a chemical, the use of ink, no? The use of ink, mechanical, because it is the use of printer. Uh, uh, that is how this first principle is real. Then the second principle says to produce a photograph, light is needed. No? Aside from sensitized materials or electronic sensors and memory card for digital photograph. Okay? Of course, one of the element of photography is light. No? One of the reason why people in the early times were able to conceptualize that images can be recorded is because of light. No? Light. So in the absence of light, you could not produce a photograph. Try to use your camera. You shut off the light. It is dark in that room, and use your camera if you could produce an image. No? Even you will be naked and have selfie on your own self without the light, without the flash of your camera, then basically you will not produce an image. There is no subject. No? Darkness has no subject. No? So that is how light is important. There are many sources of light. Meron tayong artificial light, meron tayong natural light. So yung light of our camera, like in our cell phones and camera, those are artificial. And other light sources like ring lights and so forth and so on. Of course, the sun is the number one source of light as far as photography is concerned. Then fourth one, the exclusion of all unwanted and unnecessary lights is achieved by placing the sensitized material inside a camera. This is true, especially in the early times, that if you have a film with you, do not expose them. That's why, if you will have like one before, there is a container, so you close it so that the light will not just enter. So for you not to expose the film, you have to insert it, attach it to the camera for purposes of security. So next is the amount of light on the sensitized material after exposure is not immediately visible to the eyes. So yeah, of course, especially in the early times that you have to develop first the photograph before you see the effect of light. If the light is too much or too light or too dark. But for today, with the use of digital camera, using the LCD, camera have LCD that after you took the photograph, you can view, preview. If the image is too much in light or whatever, so that you can adjust and repeat taking a photograph. That is for now. To make the formed image visible for analog, it must undergo development process. That is true, especially in analog camera, the one that I film. But for today, as I said, it is computer-based. So you just attach it in the computer, then use a printer to print it. But that's part of the development process too. The visual effect that results from the chemical processing is dependent on the quantity and quality of the exposing light. So as I said a while ago, the amount of light is very important to have a quality photograph. Okay? So do not just point and shoot and shoot. The quality is very important. Especially in forensic photography, you have to consider those. Do not just shoot and shoot. Do not just take photograph without considering the amount of light. You do not considering light, the quality of your photograph, because it will be useless at the end of the day that they will produce it. Next is too light will produce transparent or white shade. Of course, try that. Too much light, you use too much light in your photography, it will happen to the photograph. It will have a white shade. You will become like a white lady. Then the varying shade of gray will finally form the complete image. The use of tripod. Yeah, important, in the board exam, the tripod as an equipment in photography or accessory in photography is always included. tripod is a three-legged, you know, equipment or tool used in photography. You know, that's the purpose of tripod. You know, that is used so that to avoid shaking, so that there is firm focus of the camera. Okay, because our hand is, it will produce tremor, trembling, shaking, and that will affect the quality and focus of the photograph. Okay, so tripod with a ball head mount or at least monopod handheld photograph is for amateurs, and forensic archivers are not supposed to be amateur photographers. My point there is, you have to use tripod. Those who are using their hand only, especially in forensic photography, are amateurs. But for non-amateur, they use tripod to be more accurate. Then pressing the shutter while taking the photograph moves the camera. Yeah. So, pressing pressing the shutter while taking the photograph moves the camera. The camera parts, we have the so-called shutter release button. So, when you're taking a photograph, just like pulling of the trigger of the firearm, if you will just pull the trigger, it might move the focus of the sight and you will not hit your target. So pressing of the shutter release button have techniques also, not just push because it might move the focus. Then the rules of thumb in photography: if the camera is handheld, activate the VR system. VR system. Yeah, that is the vibrating. That is a system that will. In the camera you will see that, part of the camera, the VR. You press that. That is to lessen the shaking of camera when you are holding the camera without a tripod. Okay, then shoot at the sharpest aperture of the lens. So in camera there is a focus, so you have to focus it. So meron kang there is what they call viewing system that you will view and focus it to the sharpest aperture. It's like in cell phone. If you use your cell phone, you have to focus it in the best focus before you will take it. Okay, so high quality lenses make a difference. Lens is very important. That's why ang mahal ng lens the camera, especially DSLR, to use a high quality. Then avoid high ISO, international standard organization, that is a standard ISO. Avoid high ISO. May adjustment yan. Try to see your cell phones. Even your cell phones, try to click. Meron dang ISO. Avoid high ISO when shooting on a tripod. In dim light, do not increase ISO. So that is the issue. When shooting on a tripod, not handheld. So try to say that, you can shoot the camera or you can take a photograph using a tripod or handheld. But of course, what is recommended is you use a tripod. Okay? Yeah. And when you use a tripod, sabi niya, you avoid high ISO. For you to know what is ISO, and at least you will have an idea. If you have a DSLR, try to look. If you have a cell phone, try to look also in the setting. Then out of camera image manipulation can help with focus. So out of camera image manipulation can help with focus. That is why sometimes even you are not with the use of Photoshop, that is a software, you can fix the focus of the photograph. That is also one of the threat or problem in digital photography, because you can use Photoshop to alter the original condition of your photograph. But at least what you will fix there in using photograph is the focus, not the content itself. Okay. Then 19 is hand holding the camera in anything but direct sunlight increases the likelihood of obtaining out of focus photograph. So hand holding the camera, directing or using a sunlight, you will obtain an out focus photograph. That is why, because it is there is a sunlight, it is very light. There is a very clear, no? So therefore, if you use handheld, then no, even a little movement, there will be out of focus kasi kitang-kita yan. Kasi maliwanag na maliwanag. Okay? Kung merong shaking. Then, in hand-holding situations, bracing the camera against something, wall, or railing can steady if sufficient to obtain sharp photograph. So, if you want a sharp and focused photograph, if you are not using a tripod, you are using your hands in photographing, then at least try to locate and look for a thing or a structure where you can use so that you will avoid movement of your hand when taking photograph. Okay, so those are the common principles that you have to understand so that you will produce a quality and accurate photograph, especially in forensic photography. When you're dealing with evidence, you have to have an accurate and quality photograph, no? So that it will be comprehensive, no? Okay? Do not submit a photograph that is blurred, that is too dark, or that is too light, because that will you will not convince the court. They will not appreciate your photograph. Okay? So that is as far as the principles are concerned. Then, of course, in the notes also, there are terms that you have to ponder. These are the terms that will bridge you, no? So that whatever discussion in this subject matter, then you will not be left ignorant. Because when these terms are being used in whatever discussion or topic in the subject, then at least you know what they're talking. So example, in law subject, they will say culprit. They will say felony. So if you do not know what is felony, it's like in a sentence, the felon walked away from the crime scene. So if you do not know the term felon, then basically you will not have any idea. But if you know the term, then at least felon is an offender, felon is the suspect, felon is a person who committed the crime or offense or felony, then basically you will know what to say and what to think. Okay? So that is the importance of terms. Terms are very important in every study. Okay? Just like in photography, if you do not know the term police photography, you do not know the term film, lens, and so forth and so on, then basically you will not fully understand what we are talking in this subject matter. So there are terms I already mentioned a while ago in my first, in my opening discussion, the terms photography. Do not forget the etymology, where these terms came from and who coined the term photography. It was Frederick William Herschel, in 1839. So photography came from the word phos, which means light, and graphia or graphos or graphene or graphis is to sketch. So if you give the literal meaning, you write with light. So that is why light is one of the most important element of photography. Light. Okay, so you read that is in your notes. Then forensic photography, I already mentioned that. Then police photography, I already mentioned that also. Then the term lens and film. Lens, where can you see lens and film? You can see that as part of a camera. Then, of course, the term photograph. So do not forget photograph and photography. I already mentioned that. Then, of course, the most important tool, no, or equipment in photography, uh, is the camera. No, without the camera, then basically you will not complete, no, your purpose of producing photograph. That is an equipment. So camera is an equipment. Camera is a device of recording. It's like firearm, no? Firearm. You will not hit your target without the firearm. You will not use the bullet or ammunition without a firearm. Okay, so you need that. Even there is light, but there is no camera, then basically how could you do it? Okay. Then picture, you have to distinguish picture and image. No, picture is a general term, a representation of image on any surface. So painting, photographs can be considered picture. Then light, you define the subject. No, we call the subject as the one that we want to take. No, so if you want to take evidence, that is the subject. The subject is anything that you want to record using photograph or photography. Then, of course, because of technology, we have what we call digital photography. No, what we are now is digital photography. That is why the analog photography is not anymore in practice today. But no, as far as evidence is concerned, the analog or with the use of film is much appreciated. But of course, the problem there is the process. No, the process of producing. Not unlike digital photography, in a quick of minutes you can produce an image. No, so sensitized material and in photography is unlimited. So long as you have a high volume of memory card, then you can produce as many photographs as you wish. But unlike in film, no, there is an amount of it. When you expose it, then you have to change again the film. Okay, sensitized material, we are referring to the film, and we are referring also to the photographic paper that is being used in analog photography. No? Then other important terms, you have to read them. There are how many terms that is in your notes. Those are self-explanatory. So please have your own initiative to understand them, no? Because these are common. Just like LCD, you always hear that, but LCD means liquid crystal display. It's like your cell phone, it has an LCD. Okay, so there are how many terms and its definition. There are how many? 178 as a whole terms. Okay, so that's it for my discussion as far as you're concerned. No? But I would like to continue with the basic elements of photography. The basic elements of photography. This, in fire, before there is a fire, before producing a fire, the elements must be present. Just like crime. If you are an investigator, you should establish the 3 elements of crime. No? You have to establish the motive. You have to establish the instrument used. And what is the last one? You have to establish we have the motive, instrumentation, and what is the third element of crime? Try to think. What is the third element of crime? What is the third element of crime? We have motive. Know that what is the force or what is the reason that pushes this person to do such act. Then instrumentation or instrument. What is being used? How did the crime? How did the offender committed the crime? And lastly is the What is the third one that you have to? Okay. So what? Uh, so as I said a while ago, no, as far as crime is concerned, as an investigator, you used to have for you before establishing that there is a crime involved. Then you have to establish the elements. Number one is the motive. No, is there any this driving force that pushed the suspect to commit the crime, such as jealousy? Is there jealousy, revenge, or whatever? Then second is uh, instrument. No, uh, when I say instrumentality, it involves the ability. How did the offender committed the crime? Then lastly is what? Opportunity. No? Opportunity. Okay? So if these three are present, then basically there is a crime involved. This is on a criminological point of view. No? But of course, in the criminal law, there are many elements, different specific elements of a respective crime. No? It's like in murder, homicide, arson, no, robbery, theft. These crimes punishable by law have their own respective elements. Before you will say that that is murder, then you have to establish the elements. So that is your function as investigator. No? Before you say that the crime is robbery, not theft, then you have to establish the elements of the crime as provided by law. Okay? So pag kulang yung elements, no? Then from robbery it will become theft. From theft at wala, then it will there is no crime of theft and robbery. Okay, so it's like fire also in your fire technology subject. Before you produce fire, there should be the basic elements. We have the fuel, we have the oxygen, and we have the heat. No? So if these three are combined, then they can produce fire. Without one, there will be no fire. So likewise, in photography, in general, this is a general element. No, you will see many elements of photography, but what we are talking here is basic. In other words, no, these basic elements will primarily compose the whole picture of photography. Example, no, if you are a student of criminology, no, ang galing-galing mo, you are active, no, in whatever aspect, but you failed the board examination, so you did not complete the whole process. You are unsuccessful, no? You have no face value if you will not pass the board examination. So that's like the elements of photography. In the absence of one, then basically it will paralyze the whole process. You will not be successful, and basically you will not say that there is photography. So first, there should be light. Light is the most fundamental element of all photographs. No? So they will ask you later, what is the most important element of photography? It is not the camera, but it is the light. No? Okay? So even in the camera, try to see your cell phones if it is night time, for example. Or even it is not night time. No? If it is dark in the area, without the flash of your camera, without the light, then you could not produce a good photograph. So light is very important. And again, there are many sources of light. Then camera, of course, that is the equipment. Today we are using DSLR camera. No, no. So try to read what is camera: a device of recording visual images, the form of photographs, film, or video signal. So yung CCTV na yan, that is another form of camera that produces video or visual image. Okay. So third is sensitized material. No? What is sensitized material? It will refer to the film or the photographic paper that is being used. Are we using photographic paper today? Yes. Okay. Then you read the details, the parts of sensitized material. There are 3: emulsion, anti-halation, backing, and base. And the fourth element is subject. Of course, even you have sensitized material, you have the camera and the light, but you have no subject, then that is useless. That's why if you have camera and you are not using it, then basically that is useless. You have to look for a subject to complete photography. Okay? The subject is anything. All right? So in forensic photography, our subject is the crime scene. Our subject is physical evidence. No? But if your subject is your lipstick, your filtered face, then that is not a subject of forensic photography. But rather, forensic photography, the subject of forensic photography are the physical evidence and the crime scene as a whole. Okay? Then we have chemical process. Now that is the process of development. It is the process of using chemicals, especially in the analog photography. No, you need the chemical process to produce photograph. But of course, today there is also chemical process with the use of printer, because you use chemicals like ink, no, and photo paper for that matter to produce a photograph. So those are the basic elements of photography. Do not forget them because they are very essential in understanding the concept of photography. Okay. Then, of course, do not forget the common types of photography. Common types of photography. No? So, these are categories of photography. No? Depending on who are conducting. No? If the one conducting is a criminal investigator, he is taking photograph at the crime scene for purposes of evidence, then there is forensic photography. If the one conducting photography is a police officer, no, documenting a police-related function, not a crime scene, no, yeah, taking a photograph of an arrested person, taking a photograph of a person subject of surveillance, that is police photography in general. No? Then if you are using digital camera, no? If you are using technology in the production of photograph, then that is digital photography. If you are using film, for example, no, your camera is using film. You are using the process of producing photograph or development of photograph with the use of manual chemical processes, then that is an analog photograph. That is the old type of photography. Infrared photography is also an improvement of technology. If you use infrared lights, then that is infrared photography. You read the purposes of that, of infrared photography. It involves a form of light, infrared, no, or infrared. Then ultraviolet photography, when you use ultraviolet lights, no, these are a special form of photography, and they can be used in criminal investigation. X-ray photography, no, yeah, X-ray photography. Can you use ultraviolet photography in forensic photography? Yes. Can you use infrared photography in forensic photography? Yes. No. As I said a while ago, ultraviolet photography is, as I said a while ago, these categories of photography depends on who are conducting, what is the purpose of photography, the subject of photography, the techniques used, the technology used. That is the point of these categories of photography. Okay. Then X-ray photography. Why is X-ray? Because you are using X-ray, no, to produce an image. Nangyayari yan, common ang X-ray in hospital. But can you use that in photography or forensic photography? Can you use that in criminal investigation? Can you use that in police work? Yes, as the case may be. Photomicrography. Do not forget to distinguish photomicrography and macrography. Macro and micro photography. No? So try to see, we have photomicro, no? We have micro, and we have macro photography. That is your assignment to read that. No? Spectrograph, flash photography, mugshot photography. Yan yung sinasabi ko. Sinong nag-umpisa dyan in mugshot photography? It was Alphonse Bertillon. Thermophotography, aerial. Yan. The photographer is on top, so that is why it depends on the techniques. Using helicopter or a similar equipments, or so today they are using drone. No? Then underwater, of course. So when you go and photograph inside the water, you know there are special type of camera that are water resistant. No. Then advertising photography, alam niyo naman yan. Advertising. You want to promote your products. That is advertising. Fashion and glamour. Yan, uso yan sa inyo. No? Then crime scene photography. Yan. So, why there is crime scene photography and why there is forensic photography? No? So, forensic photography, crime scene photography, they are but similar. No? Do not forget that. So, try to see and read. Crime photography and photographing the scene of the crime scene. No? So, parehas lang yan. Crime scene photography and forensic photography, they are the same. No? Magkaiba lang sila ng spelling. Okay. Then, still life photography, pakibasa na lang yan. Food photography, yan. Dahil kayo magaling. No? Pag may kinakain ka. Promoting food. No? Editorial, photojournalism, that is for the members of the mass media. Portrait and wedding photography, yan. Huwag muna yan sa inyo. Nag-aaral pa kayo. Fine art photography, yan. And landscape photography, and others. There are still many kinds of photography. As I said, it depends on who is conducting, why he is conducting, its purpose, the subject of photography, the instrument used, and so forth and so on. Okay? Then, do not forget the importance of forensic photography. You have to read them. No? So photography is very important, yes. Without forensic photography and criminal investigation, then basically, criminal investigation will be paralyzed. You know, in almost all aspects of investigation, there is photography. Hindi yan nawawala. Forensic photography. So try to imagine so that you will understand. Uses of photography in law enforcement. No? Identification. Yeah, that is why when a person is arrested, there is mugshot for future reference, no, or identification of the suspect, no, and others, no. With the use of photograph, we can use that to look for a missing person, and other purposes as far as you use photograph to identify someone or something. Then communication and microfilm files. Yeah. Files includes investigative report files, accident files. You know that those are purposes of record keeping, yan, archiving. Okay? Then of course, photograph can be used as evidence. Yan. Yung CCTV camera, nandun yung mukha mo, when you are raping the pig or whatever, that is an evidence. Then offender detection, no? That is in connection to evidence. Then court exhibits, yeah, you present that in court. No? If they need the image of the corpse or cadaver of the victim, then you bring the photograph as a court exhibit. Then reproduction or copying, that is true. With the use of photograph, you can reproduce documents. No? That's why we have the Xerox machine. No? You can also photograph your exam, no? And produce it. Yeah? How you reproduce using photograph. Pag nag-cheat ka, you can photograph. Then lang kayo magaling. Then personal training. Of course. You can use photograph to as an instrument for your students or for those people undergoing training to more understand what is all about the discussion. No? Then crime and fire prevention hazard with the use of photograph, just like in the cigarette. If you see there is a photograph of a disease, no, because of cigarette, they put that in the cigarette packing so that you will see, no, the danger of cigarette and others. Then other related use of photograph just to prevent fire and crime, no. Then the photograph of a shoplifter, they can display that in public for to prevent his dispersion, di ba? Pag may classmate kayong parating nag-cheat, you post the picture of that. Oh, this is the man who is always cheating. Yeah, so that other classmates will not be in dispersion. Then public relations. Yeah, of course, when you say seminar, you do photograph, show them to show public relations. Okay, so those are the purposes and others. There are many still other uses. All right, so that is the end of my discussion, and we shall continue later for the historical developments of photography. Okay, thank you.